It can be really hard to know how your game of D&D is going and how your campaign is being received. And I know I'm Mr. Healthy communication between adults makes your D&D games better, but the very idea of asking how am I doing sends social anxiety shivers through my spine. But we also have to be able to ask for feedback, otherwise we can't learn and grow. And there are a few things you can do during your games to open the lines of communication and introduce a healthy approach to gathering feedback. There are probably going to be many more approaches in the comments below, and I encourage you to go and check them out. And share your own approach if I don't discuss it in this video. But these are the techniques that I use in my games. The first way to collect feedback is such a natural part of the way most D&D games are played that we don't ever really think about it. Until, hypothetically, you find yourself playing your games remotely for 2.5 years, and then you really start to miss it. This is the post-game hangout where you and your other players just take a few minutes, or maybe much longer, and just hang out. Before people go back to their cars and their lives and their partners, they decompress. You can actually learn a lot from these post-game hangouts, even if they're only a couple of minutes long. As an example, I'm going to briefly show you 2 clips from the end of 2 different episodes of Critical Role. I'll edit around some points that might be spoilers. I'm just trying to illustrate my point about the value of post-game communication. This is the end of one episode where we can tell immediately, very clearly, that the party is going to need to have some conversations before the next game. They need to make sure that everybody's in a good place, they need to process what happened in this session, and they need to figure out what the next steps are going forward.
And that's where we'll pick up next episode.
Oh, shit.
What? Why would you do that to us?
Well, that went sideways.
Yeah. Let's stop this conversation for now. We'll have more of this conversation
Pick this up
later.
next week. It's fun to be the DM. Is it Thursday, Ed?
And this is from the end of the very next episode, where it's very clear that everyone had a really positive response and everyone enjoyed the session, and sometimes that's all the feedback you need.
And that's where we'll end tonight's episode.
Fucking you coming to our house! Wow.
Wow. Look at that little boy smile. He's so pleased.
On time, 10:05.
Wow.
Hey.
Wow.
It won't always be as obvious as this. These are 2 of the most extreme reactions you can have. That's why I picked them. But sometimes just hearing the emotional reactions of your players can be a great first step, because it tells you who is fully on board and satisfied with the session, and who might be feeling some frustration or reluctance or resentment about something that happened in the game. I think a huge part of being a dungeon master is listening to your players and honoring their choices and their feelings, and this is part of that. Being able to listen to your group in the aftermath of a game really helps you understand how they're feeling and what they're responding to. But there's another tactic you can use to covertly gather information about what matters most to your players in the game. At the beginning of the session, instead of issuing an authoritative recap as the dungeon master who has all the information and understands the full plot, you ask the players to deliver a recap instead. What you get is something that is certainly imperfect, but probably much more useful, because it will tell you which aspects of the game your players are most interested in and what they're remembering about the game, and what they're focusing on. This is a trick I stole from a Matt Colville video, and I have used it in probably every session for about 4 years now. There are some times that I have to step in because I know that it has been too long since the last session, and it's unfair to expect the players to remember every detail when so much real-life time has passed. But whenever I can, I ask the players to give me the recap, because it tells you a lot about the game that you're running. For example, if somebody misremembers some detail, that's fine. Don't correct them. That's how they remember it. Don't focus on the details they messed up, focus on the details they remembered. Listen to what they are telling you matters to them. If you've introduced an important NPC that you thought of as a useful ally to the party, and in the recap your players describe that character as a jerk, or something much more colorful, then they didn't misremember that, you just got useful feedback. At the very least, you know where the disconnect is, and you can ask for more feedback if you want to get some more specifics. If they have a main plot and 3 major side quests that are on their plate, and they spend the entire recap talking about the last 10 minutes of the game where they just tried to catch a rat in a bakery, then that will tell you a lot too. It probably tells you that they're not really worried about the main plot, or that they've fully forgotten it. Or maybe even that they don't even realize that that is the main plot. It might not tell you exactly where you messed up, and it might not even tell you exactly how to fix mistakes that you've made or course correct the campaign. But at the very least, it does give you a lot of information about which aspects of the campaign you should probably put your attention toward. But there are some times when you just need to drill down and get some information from the players about what they're responding to and where you need to improve. Maybe you heard something during the recap or the post-game discussion and you want to try to get some more feedback on where that disconnect was. Or maybe there is an aspect of your game that you are insecure about, and you want to know whether your work has paid off or if you still have a long way to go. In these cases, the first approach I would advise is talking to one player at a time and doing so in between sessions. And try to make sure that you aren't nesting the answer that you want to hear inside the question. You guys trusted the mayor's son, right? Well, if you ask it that way, you've already told them the answer that you want to hear. And so now they're not thinking about the game, they're thinking about what they're supposed to tell you. A better version of that question would be, what did you think of the mayor's son? That gives your players a chance to give you feedback without the bias of what you hope their answer is going to be. If they want to know why you're asking, just try to stay neutral. You can say something like, I just want to know how the campaign is going. It's sometimes hard for me to tell what's working and what's not because I have all the information, so I'm trying to figure out where I can improve in running the game for you. This might freak some of you out. I know. I get it. It is scary putting yourself out there like that. And it flies in the face of a lot of ideas we have about how dungeon masters are supposed to seem knowledgeable and infallible. But I've talked about this before. We're people. We're human beings. And the only way to learn and grow and get better is to ask questions. And being able to learn and grow is the only way we're going to get better. Let's take a quick moment and acknowledge that if you want to grow and improve as a dungeon master, one great way to do that is with today's sponsor, World Anvil. World Anvil is an online resource where you can create articles and timelines, upload and nest maps, and even play the game through the website. You can craft and track an entire world and access all the information with just a few keystrokes. It's so much easier than putting everything in a big binder, which, no joke, is something I used to do. And I would carry it around, because as DMs, we sometimes want to work on our campaign setting wherever we are. When we're at work, or on the commute, when we're at dinner, when we're at the park, even on a road trip. But with World Anvil, we can do all of that online. Sign up for World Anvil for free or use the code SUPERGEEK to save 40% on any annual subscription. Thanks to World Anvil for sponsoring the video. There may also be times in the middle of a game when you feel like something isn't working the way it should. Depending on how serious it is, there are two ways to handle it. If it seems like it may be just one player who isn't happy with the story, or you feel like there's somebody who hasn't said something to the sketchy NPC that the party is working with, you can ask a probing question. Carla, how does Jezebel feel about Lord Kensington? By asking that player directly, you're giving them permission to voice any concerns they might have. That's really useful because some players don't want to dissent. They might feel like they're going to get shut down, or they don't want to break up the flow of the session. Or maybe they're just shy. And by asking them directly, you're basically sending a signal that it's okay to share whatever's on their mind. But also, by asking them how their character feels, you're giving them a chance to share their feelings through the filter of their character. It keeps them invested in the story and the campaign, and it gives them an opening to introduce those feelings into the story. Through this method, once you know how your players feel, or at least how their characters feel, you can make adjustments to your campaign as needed. And being able to ask these questions in the middle of a session is really, really valuable feedback. Because if something is not working for some or all of your players, and it needs to be addressed, then it should be handled as soon as possible. But sometimes the issue at the table has to be resolved out of character, and it has to be resolved before the next session, or during the session. If you're just starting out as a dungeon master, it's okay to not know yet whether or not something can wait until after the session. You'll get better about this over time as you play more games, and that's totally fine. But if you play long enough, you will see it happen eventually. Sometimes the situation gets to the point where you might have to pause the game and just ask people how they're doing. Again, don't ask leading questions. It's tempting. We all do it. It's part of our culture. We want to hint at what the right answer to the question is. But my life got a lot better when I realized that when I'm asking a question, I need to be emotionally prepared to receive any answer, not just the answer I'm hoping for. Otherwise, I could have just made a statement. I could just say something like, I really hope you're all comfortable during the game. That's just as valuable as me saying, you're all cool with this, right? When I really hope the answer is yes, because that's not really a question. If you've paused the game, you also need to be especially conscious of the fact that some players are just going to say what they think you want to hear so you can get back to the game and resume the status quo. And that's not because they feel the game is more important than making sure everyone feels good or is having a good time. It's not that at all. Not always. It might just be that pausing the game and asking for a check-in makes them uncomfortable. It literally takes them out of their comfort zone, and they don't know how to proceed that way. So they'll just say what they think you want to hear. But regardless of how they feel, sometimes you do need to pause and ask, how is everybody doing? Because if something upsetting happened during a game, either because of a choice you made as the dungeon master, or a choice that another player made, or just the unlucky rolls of the dice, it sometimes can't wait until you can do your debrief at the end of the session or between sessions. There are some extreme examples I won't specify, but it can happen for any number of reasons. If they feel like they're going on the side quest because they're obligated to, not because they have any interest in doing so, you need to know that now. If they feel like your villains can't be defeated because to them it seems like the rules don't apply to your monsters, you need to know that before the next round of combat. If they feel like you've railroaded them into your dungeon, you need to know that they feel like they can't leave, because you need to take action and resolve these things at the table pretty much immediately. Having to pause my game is my greatest social anxiety nightmare in D&D. And it's because that's my most raw, exposed, vulnerable state I can be in when running a game. But it's also important to remember that my comfort at the table is not the only thing that matters. When you're running a game for your friends, you want to make sure that they're having fun. If they're not, and you can tell, you might need to pause and ask how they feel. And here's another thing to know, and this applies to all of these techniques. You need to hear your players out. It can be really tempting to jump in and defend ourselves or offer an explanation. And there may be a value there. It may be relevant and helpful for them to hear your thought process because it will shed some light on something that didn't make sense at the table. But first, let them say their piece. Let them get everything off of their chest. You as a DM have an extraordinary amount of power at the table. And that's not just true of the story. You actually have a lot more authority in the group than anybody else does. And as a dungeon master, we often feel this pressure to present an image of somebody who has it all figured out. That is, after all, very often the expectation. But while that can be important, and there is value to cultivating that atmosphere around you if that's part of your style and how you want to run your game, it can also backfire, because it can make it seem like the players can't say anything about the things you're doing that bother them or upset them. So the responsibility falls to you. If you believe there's a chance that somebody at the table is not on the same page as you are, or there's something you're doing as a DM that is not landing, it's your job to open the door to that discussion. What form that takes is up to you. Again, these are just some of the options. There are certainly more in the comments below. But don't wait for somebody else to handle that situation. You're the DM. You have the most authority. It's on you. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this video is useful to some of you out there, especially if this is something you have not considered or given a lot of thought to. I really hope this opens your eyes to the potential power that you have at the table to make sure things go smoothly, and some of the methods you can use to do that. If you want to support the channel, there are a few ways you can do that. You can subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about new videos as soon as they come out. You can sign up for my Patreon and help contribute money that makes this channel better. You can join my Discord and be a part of a cool community of people hanging out, talking about D&D, starting games, doing cool stuff. And you can sign up for my newsletter and get occasional updates about the major things I've got going on. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, play fair and have fun. Now there's a helicopter above me, because I live in a bad neighborhood.